Welcome to the morning show. We're coming today on WJOP-LP Newburyport at FM 96.3, on Channel 9, and on Newburyport Community Media's YouTube channel at ncmhub.org. I'm your host, Mary Jacobsen, and I'm just delighted to welcome Tracy Dawson to the show today. Tracy is the author of a really well-written, fascinating book called Let Me Be Frank, a book about women who dress like men to do shit they weren't supposed to do, which came out in May of this year from HarperCollins. Tracy's an award-winning actress and a TV writer who began her career with The Second City in Toronto. She was a writer and a lead actor on the Canadian sitcom Call Me Fitz, and she went on to win a Gemini Award and a Canadian Screen Award for Best Lead Actress in a Comedy Series for her work opposite Jason Priestley on that show. Tracy was born in Ottawa, Canada, and is currently based in Los Angeles, where she lives with her life partner, Isaac, who is a dog. And that shows, I think, really wise judgment about a life partner. Tracy, welcome. Thank you so much for taking time to visit the morning show.
Of course, Mary, so great to be here.
Well, I loved your book, Tracy, and I was just thrilled when you agreed to come on the show and talk about it. I hope that you could start us off this morning with your experience that you had as a comedy writer that really launched your interest in the history of gender power politics, expressed through enforcement of male and female dress codes.
Yes, well, as I discuss in the introduction of the book, something happened to me almost 10 years ago when I was starting out as a TV writer here in LA. And, you go in and you have these meetings when they're trying to hire writers for all their TV shows. And so I went into a big studio that I will not name. And you're chit-chatting and they've read your material, they like something about you, and this executive said, so which of our shows interest you, which can you see yourself writing on? And I said, well, I think this one would be great, or this is a good fit. And I named 3 shows, and she said, oh, well, none of those shows have any female needs.
Yeah.
And I was like, I was stunned to speechlessness, which is very rare for me. And I also, I think I turned red. I felt like ashamed, like I felt embarrassed, because it never crossed my mind that someone would see me as a female writer. Like, basically saying there's jobs available, but not for you, right?
Yeah.
It's like, that's what someone's telling you to your face. I would like to think that that would not be said directly to writers in 2022, that things have changed a little bit. But anyway, what that experience did is, well, I was very upset. And I thought, for a second, like, I had long hair at the time. I was like, could I cut my hair off? Like, could I, like, my boobs are kind of small. I thought, like, I just want to write jokes. Like, I'm a funny writer. Like, what do I got to do? I didn't seriously consider doing it, but it crossed my mind. And it really fed into a lot of the writing that followed for me creatively. I wanted to explore these themes of, like I wrote an idea for a television show that was sort of like a reverse Tootsie. And like, because I wanted to just investigate what happened to me, and so years and years later, I had this idea that sort of was like the seed was planted back then in 2013, and I saw this article on Jezebel where the author Catherine Nichols had taken out her book, like with, I think they send out the first 10 pages of the novel, and she sent it out with her real name, her female name, Catherine, and then pretty dismal response, sent it out again with the name George. And had a much better response. This exact same submission, the exact same pages. And I was like, this was 2015, I think. And I was like, all those feelings from that 2013 moment,
Yeah.
And so I started to research, but how many women through the ages would have taken on a male guise, either by name or physically or something like that. And I thought, Mary, I would not find that many people. I didn't think there'd be enough subjects through time. Well, guess what? I was wrong. So originally, and I don't think you know this because I didn't put it in the book, but originally I thought this could be a TV idea, like an anthology series where each episode could be a self-contained focus on each of these women. And I wasn't successful in setting that show up, even though everybody was incredibly intrigued by the idea. I think it seemed a very expensive idea, very ambitious idea. And, you know, I'm not Shonda Rhimes. I was more of of an up and coming writer at the time. Anyway, I didn't want to let these women down. I had done all this research. I said, I have to, how can I do this? The book was almost born out of desperation in a way, because I desperately wanted to share these stories and I wanted to shout about them from the rooftops. These incredible women, that most of which are unknown. A few of them are known by people, which we can get into, but most of them are just unknown. And so I just said, maybe this is a book. What a great thought. You know, I was a writer. I'd written plays, comedy, TV. I'd done all this writing, but I'd never thought of writing a book. And I said, I'll try it. Like, it was so easy just to think, well, if this fails, it doesn't matter that much, because I didn't have these, like, I have to write a book, dreams and aspirations. Well, then it ended up, I found the right book agent. I found the right editor. Like, everything fell into place. And that to me was a message from something bigger than myself, that this was the way it was all supposed to go.
Yeah. The universe wanted your book, I think. And I'm glad it fell into place, because they are such important stories. And your story is dramatic and compelling and infuriating, and as are all these stories that you tell throughout history. We've all heard of Joan of Arc, of course, but there's so many others. It's stunning how many there are. And so I'm really glad that the idea, gee, maybe I'll write a book, found you, because I think that maybe it'll be easier. Of course, as I was reading the book, I kept thinking this would make a wonderful anthology show as well, because the stories are very dramatic and would lend themselves, I think, to your script writing talents. So maybe that'll be step 2 rather than step 1. Fingers crossed.
Yes, thank you. I agree.
But you know, so there's so many fascinating historic stories told in your book about women through the ages who transgressed dress codes in order to find freedom to express their talents, their substantial talents and intelligence, and not for nothing also acquire independent livelihoods. And they extend from ancient Egypt to modern times, and probably further ago than that. But there were 3 that particularly intrigued me, and I hope that that you might share something about what you found intriguing about each of them. Could we start with Ellen Craft, whose story is just astonishing?
Astonishing. Well, first of all, I will say as a preamble that the most astonishing thing about Ellen Craft's story to me was that I had never heard of her. So,
Yes.
you know, that I thought, well, maybe it's because I was brought up in Canada and in Canadian schools, maybe I wasn't taught her story, right? Well, no, I spoke to many, many American people, and they were not told her story, which is one of the most incredible stories in American history. So I'll just throw that out there. But I'll tell the audience, people listening, that so Ellen Craft was a light-skinned mixed race woman. She was born into slavery, and she escaped from her enslavement with her husband, William, in 1848. And how they escaped is Ellen posed as a white male plantation owner, her husband posing as her enslaved valet. And they traveled from Georgia all the way up to free Philadelphia, it's just incredible.
It's mind-boggling.
It's absolutely incredible. Why did we not learn about Ellen and William in school? Why is I've been saying throughout the book, of course, where's this movie? Where's this biopic? Why do we have I'm sorry, but why do we have a movie about Ford and Ferrari, this biopic about, I'm not gonna watch that movie, but like not about Ellen Craft. So, but the other thing is, so they had to be so incredibly brave to do this. They had to be stealth. They had to be smart. But Ellen, the whole affair really rested on her shoulders, because she had to portray a different gender, a different race, and a different class. She did not know how to read or write, but they managed to travel by boat and by train and were undetected. And it was so smart that they decided to put her arm in a sling, making her lame, and so was not able to sign her name as this male white plantation owner on any like ship logs or hotel registries and stuff. And so, and also like what one time, feigned deafness on a train just to try to like keep your blinders on, you know, I'm just a guy on the train, like trying to get up to Philadelphia. So it was unbelievably, like, they were successful, but once they got to Philadelphia, they inevitably had to flee to the UK because unfortunately there were terrible laws put into place about, bounty hunters who could go
Yeah.
off and try to bring back escaped
Yeah.
enslaved people because of property. I mean, it's
Yeah.
unbelievable. The president was, approved this. And so they were like, we're not safe. We're going to go to the UK. It's just an unbelievable part of American history, and it should be taught everywhere. Everybody should
Yeah.
know this story. And we should never stop teaching any of these stories in school, just to put a little plug in there for all these bans on critical race
Yeah.
theory.
Absolutely. It's just it's mind-boggling, the courage and honestly, Tracy, the creativity.
Yeah.
They thought it all out, but it was
Hmm.
bold and it was incredibly dangerous. And it's just a very compelling narrative. So thank you for bringing that story to a greater awareness. And I hope somebody makes, I think it deserves both a documentary and a narrative film. So, Shonda Rhimes, if you're listening, get on it. So, well, I also wanted to ask you about Tarpon Mills. Now,
Hmm.
you've mentioned that sometimes for women writers, it's not so much that you need to dress up like a man, but sometimes you need to either use male initials so nobody knows what your gender is, or use a male name so people think it's
Hmm.
written by a man, and you can get very, very different results. But could you talk to us about Tarpon Mills and about Miss Fury?
Absolutely. Well, before I started writing this book, I had never heard of Tarpe Mills, just the same as with Alan Kraft, which also upset me. I mean, it's a great number of people have reached out to me since reading the book, and they say, not only did I love this and I laughed and I was enjoying it, but I was also upset. And I was like, job well done, Tracy. Because it's like, yeah, it's upsetting. It's like the fact that we actually don't know about a lot of these people. But anyway, Tarpe Mills was born June Tarpe Mills. She took the June off of her name to sound less female. Tarpe is definitely not it's a very unusual name.
Yeah.
And so it was definitely, she was trying to just defeminize. She drew comics in the 1940s, and she drew adventurous comics and, crime and, stuff like this. And so she had said later in her life in an interview that she wanted to, defeminize her name because she thought that the little kids would think it wasn't cool, that they would think it was kind of a bummer if they found out that a dame had written these comics, which, one can't help but think how reminiscent that is of J.K. Rowling's
Yeah.
publishers telling her, we don't think little boys want to read a book about wizards written by someone named Joanne. So we have it in the 1940s, and we have it, that was the late 90s that happened with J.K. Rowling, which is, it's, as a side note, it's so demoralizing.
It
It's
is.
so disgusting to me that this idea of like a girl's name, a girl, like that, it's so unpleasant to them that they think that, little boys wouldn't dare read a book. I mean, it's unbelievable to me that this happened, but it's less shocking that it was the 1940s, right, with Tarpe
Yeah.
Mills, because it was very rare for a woman to be a comic book writer, and she was incredible. She didn't just write the book; she also did all the illustrations. And oftentimes, there's two people who work on a comic, right? She did it all. Um, so it was the 1940s. She was writing comics, and then what's even more remarkable about her is that not only was she a female writing comics, she created the first female superhero, Miss Fury. And Miss Fury hit the scene a full 8 months before Wonder Woman came on the scene. A lot of people, I would say most people, do not know that.
Yeah.
So Miss Fury was originally called Black Fury. And the thing that's incredible is that, you know, it's upsetting. Again, I try to write the book with a lot of lightness and jokes. I'm a comedy writer, but I also have a lot of passion. I wear my heart on my sleeve, and it was really hard to write this chapter, as I said in the chapter, because I talked more about Miss Fury than I did about Tarpe Mills, because there's no biography book written about Tarpe Mills.
Yeah.
And very little has been preserved from the Miss Fury comics from the 40s. And what's astounding, Mary, is that she was a huge hit. She was a sensation. Miss Fury's image adorned B-52 planes overseas during the war. I mean, she was in all the newspapers. She was a sensation. And so the fact that nothing was preserved, nothing was archived. There's no Miss Fury movie, clearly. I do believe that that's going to change. I feel it in the air that there's going to be something to do with Miss Fury. I mean, I would love to be involved. You know, I'm hoping to pitch some ideas. Obviously, I wrote about it passionately in my book, but I really hope that people, when they read the book, and I really hope people read the book because I think they'll love it.
Yeah.
But that they're inspired to learn more, you know, to go out and be like, I need to know Tarpe Mills, this is incredible. Her story is incredible, you know, and it took until I think 2018 or 2019 for her to be inducted into the Comic Book Hall of Fame, you know, where most of the people in that Hall of Fame are men. So
Yeah.
that's Tarpe Mills. I love her.
Well, you know, fingers crossed. I hope you do pursue a script idea for Miss Fury, because she sounds like such an amazing superhero, and we need her.
And what's great about her is that she had no superpowers. You know, she, like Wonder Woman, had superpowers and had that lasso and stuff like that. And Miss Fury, the way that Tarpe Mills crafted her was, she was just wise. She was smart. She was
Yeah.
she was capable. She was like high achieving, but also she was super sexy. And that was another thing about Miss Fury, why it was so successful. It was successful with boys, girls, men, and women. It was like young, old, and all genders, you know, and it had something for everybody. As I just think she really deserved more preserving.
Yeah, we need to bring her back. Well, the third one, I mean, there were so many that I was taken with, but I was particularly taken with the story of the courageous and bold Dr. Mary Walker. Could you tell us about her?
Of course. Dr. Mary Edwards Walker is definitely one of my favorites in the book. So I'm with you on that. Dr. Walker is the only woman to ever receive the Medal of Honor. She was the second woman to graduate from medical school in the United States of America. And when the Civil War broke out, she headed down there to enlist, to say, I want to serve. I'm a surgeon. And she was laughed out of the office. What? Get out of here. You know, and it was, you know, we see this again and again in history when women or people of color or queer people, when their efforts and their achievements and their innovations are not wanted. You know, it's just like cutting your nose off to spite your face. So she was laughed out, and she said, okay, well, if I can't participate officially, I'm going to volunteer my services. So she was a volunteer surgeon, and she continued to ask for an appointment in a position, and they kept saying no. And then the press got involved and said, what are you doing? You've got a capable, amazing person. She's got a degree. She's a medical doctor. She's a surgeon. She wants to help. Give her a position. And so they kind of were shamed by the press into finally giving her this position as the first woman to be a surgeon during the Civil War. She was taken prisoner of war. She was held captive for months. And inevitably, she was awarded that Medal of Honor by the president. And they tried to take the medal back because they said, no, we've changed our mind. It should only be for people who actually participated in battle, whatever they call that.
Combat,
yeah. What's I wrote it here in my notes. That's so silly that I'm like, no, actual combat. Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, she said, no, I'm not doing that. But the other reason, I mean, the main reason, all those things are amazing, but the reason she's included in the book is because she was adamant about dress reform. She believed that dressing in long dresses and petticoats and layers that dragged along the ground was unhygienic. She believed in comfort and freedom of movement, and her parents brought her up with that too. They were very advanced, progressive thinking parents who believed in education for daughters and stuff like this. And so she, for most of her life, especially in her older years, she dressed in male clothing, but she was adamant, I don't dress in men's clothing. I dress in my clothing.
Yeah.
And she did it for her own reasons because she wanted to. And she was arrested innumerable times for impersonating a man. Finally, the last time she was hauled into court, the judge said, stop doing this. You will never arrest her again. She's got a Medal of Honor. you know, she served this country. She can wear whatever the heck she wants. And apparently, like, you know, they broke out into applause in the courtroom. So I included her because she was, I mean, she sounds like she was, you know, like a ball buster. She sounds like
Yeah.
she was just so bold and brave. And I really related to her. Like, talk about not taking no for an answer, doing what she truly believed in. She actually valued dress reform, and
Yeah.
what is on a woman's back was more important than getting the vote. That's how
Mm.
adamant she was about dress
Mhm.
reform and freedom of movement. So I absolutely love her.
I love her too. My motto growing up was girls need pockets. Come on now. You know? and,
Oh
and,
my gosh, it's
and
a running joke with me and my friends about dresses that have pockets.
Yeah, absolutely. Or better yet, pants, because it's so much easier to run and move and do anything you want in pants. So God bless Dr. Mary Walker, you know, for
Agreed.
all of her contributions. So, well, you know, Tracy, I also want to ask you, I know that it's a little bit like asking a parent who their favorite child is, but I was hoping that you could tell us about maybe one or two of your subjects that you were particularly fond of or amazed by.
Well, obviously, Dr. Walker was one of them, as
Yeah.
I said. But another person who I was quite taken with was Dorothy Lawrence.
Mm.
Dorothy Lawrence was a young woman in the UK who, at 18 or 19, she desperately wanted to be a journalist. You know, she was writing little puff pieces that were deemed like stuff that was for ladies. And she said, you know what? The First World War broke out. And she said, I'm going to go over to France and I'm going to report on the war. Well, again, she went to the newspapers to say, you know, would you sponsor me to get over there? And they laughed at her. They said, "Are you?" They didn't they they didn't just laugh, like they thought this is a crazy person. You know, that's
Mm.
how female ambition was seen by a lot of people, right? So she said, okay, well, if you're not going to help me, I'm going to get over myself, which is amazing. She took her bike, she got on the ferry, she crossed the channel from the UK to France. And she got over there, she lived with the locals, she assessed the situation, and then she said, I have to get to the front lines. And so she met some, you know, fellow Brits who helped her get the makings of a soldier's uniform.
Mm.
She cut off her hair, she disguised herself as a man, and she got to the front lines. It's unbelievable. She ended up taking on the guys, or the she was disguised as a sapper, and they dug mines and they put
Mm.
explosives, and that they were, you know, they were at the front lines, but they didn't have to stay. The sappers had freedom of movement because they never had to stay in their little group. So it was kind of the perfect disguise for her. So she could like move around and suss things out. And like, you know, she's thinking of stories that she wants to write so that she can have a scoop. It was just so ambitious. It was
Yeah.
so bold.
Yeah.
And as I say in the book, like I thought I was a bold teenager. I would tell my parents, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And they would go, wait, 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 you know? And here she is. She was an orphan. Her mother had died. She was in like, she had a guardianship, and she went to France. She went to a battle ravaged country because she was hoping to get a scoop. Inevitably, she was found out and she became an efficient prisoner of war. They thought she was a spy, that she was going to try and usurp them in some way. And she had to be interrogated countless times. Then they put her in a convent with some nuns for a while. I mean, this is a movie. This is a movie.
It's totally a movie.
So it's like, I'm just going to spend the rest of my life writing the movies based on the people in my book. It's like, it's going to take a long time to write all these movies, Mary. But anyway, they forbid her from writing a word about her experiences until
Mm.
after the armistice. But she ended up writing a book, which I will tell anybody listening, you can find it on Google Books. And I read the
Mm.
whole thing cover to cover. It didn't take that long. It wasn't a huge book. And she's funny and she tells a great story and she's witty. And it was not supported. The book was, they laughed at her. They called her a freak. They spun it that her story was a huge failure. I,
Mm.
what? Like, I can't,
Yeah.
to me, when she stepped on that ferry, when she got on that boat, that's her win. That's her win.
Yeah.
Makes me want to
Absolutely.
break down crying, you know?
Yeah.
So she's a triumph in my eyes. And it's really
Yeah.
sad that her story was not triumphant in the
Yeah.
end, but I absolutely love her. And I just I felt her, you know, as I was writing
Yeah.
the book. I also loved reading about Ann Petrie, who was the first African American woman writer to sell more than 1 million copies of a novel. And that was in 1946, which is
Mm.
absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
She was born in Connecticut in 1908, and that book that sold over 1 million copies was called The Street. And, she was brought up in a middle class, neighborhood in Connecticut. Her father was a pharmacist, her mother was an entrepreneur. And so she had a sort of a privileged life, but then she decided to relocate with her husband to Harlem, which was just like full of creativity and bustling, but also there was poverty and there was racism and there was police brutality, and it opened up her eyes after growing up in Connecticut, and so she started to put that in her writing, and she put it into The Street. And it's just considered what is the Library of America, I have a little in my notes here, the Library of America um calls The Street unsurpassed for its unblinking portrayal of the realities and
Mm.
challenges of Black female working class life.
Yeah.
The reason I wrote about her in the book is because when she first started to write and to publish her work and her short stories, she took on a male pseudonym. And nobody knows exactly why she did that. Maybe it was, shyness or fear of failure, or I don't exactly know. By the time she wrote The Street, she was using her own name. And then her popularity exploded
Mm.
and she was famous and she hated it. She didn't want to be in the public eye. She kind of was questioning, why did I start writing using my own
Mm.
name? Inevitably, they moved back to her and her husband left Harlem. They moved back to Connecticut, got an unlisted phone number, and kind of refused to do interviews after that. She just wanted
Mm.
to write.
Yeah.
She wanted everyone to read her writing. She just didn't want to talk to you about it. And
Yeah.
so I hope people will seek out The Street after they read the book and after they hear about her, because I don't think enough people know about what a huge deal she was.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure people don't. And one of the great benefits of your book is that you resuscitate people from history that we should all know about. And to me, what they all have in common and what's important for everybody to know about is this quality of not letting anything stop them, absolute tenacity and being true to themselves, which makes them a success, in my opinion, from the get-go. Well,
Agreed.
I'm curious to find out, now that the book's been out and people have been reading it, Tracy, what are you hearing from readers about how the book has impacted them?
Well, first of all, like me, I think that people have been like blown away about how many people they didn't know.
Yeah.
And I love to hear that they said, because of your book, I went and I found, because there's a big chapter in the middle of the book called Anonymous Was a Woman.
Yeah.
And it's a large compendium chapter of many different people, because I wanted to include everybody who wrote either using a male pseudonym or wrote anonymously. Like my most well-read friends did not know that Jane Austen never published anything using her name while she was alive, and the same for
Yeah.
the Bronte sisters.
Yeah.
Most people don't know that, and so
I didn't know that.
and it's mind-boggling,
Yeah.
but I also talk about like a lot of other authors who were celebrated it during their lifetimes, but maybe who faded from memory, like Anne Petrie. And so when I hear from people that they went to the library and got this book or that book, and now they want to read more and more, it's just so incredible, because like I can't write everything in the book, right? You can't put
Yeah.
every single detail, so you
Yeah.
hope that you've inspired someone to go and seek out more. Also, I love hearing from people that they're inspired, like just this idea of women, that we persevere, that we don't give
Yeah.
up, that that the world might be, that the patriarchy might be afraid or trying to keep us down, but that, so even like in small moments in someone's life, like these bigger stories can sort of help, like inspire you, to maybe go in and talk to your boss and say, I would like to talk about, a raise. I think it's time that I have a raise. You know what I mean? Like that people can take these stories and to feel inspired to maybe ask for what they deserve in their own life, and that they
Yeah.
feel inspired. Like that's incredible. I also love hearing that people are sharing the book with their children. Now, this book
Oh,
is not written for children.
yeah.
There are some swear words in this book, but it's written in a conversational, um casual way, like, because I
Right.
wanted to feel as if I was sitting across from the reader and holding their hands and saying, you've got to listen to this, and so I think that it is very appealing for younger audiences. It's like teenagers, college, like people are saying, oh, I read this book and I'm buying a copy for my daughter, and I'm just like,
Oh, that's,
I
oh,
just love it,
yes. Yeah, that's very, very gratifying, I'm sure. Because it is written in a very, very accessible way. It's history, but it's vibrant, it's alive. You make these figures from the past seem very, very accessible, very real. And it
Thank
clearly
you.
is creating that sense of possibility for people. So I want to do this, I'm going to go bold. And that's wonderful. That must be very gratifying for you,
Very.
Trace. Well, I did want to ask you, I was curious because we live in an age today when, people talk about being non-binary, the word gender fluidity has come into vogue. And I'm just curious to find out, Tracy, whether you think things have improved.
Well, I'm certainly no expert, but I can only talk about my own experience, which is, let's talk about the word queer, because for eons that was a negative, a
Yeah.
derogatory phrase, and it has been completely reclaimed by the LGBTQ community, and it has impacted me because I feel I have always known that I am not straight, let's say. But I always felt like some of the labels and some of the lingo didn't super apply to me. But bisexuality, pansexuality, I always felt they actually seemed like they had a rigidity to them. So
Mm,
when things are becoming more fluid and becoming less binary and becoming and queer, which is so, it's such a welcoming term. It's such a
mm,
loving, all encompassing
mm,
term. And so in the last handful of years, I've come to understand my queerness,
mm.
and so that's impacted me greatly because I feel like just there's more understanding that things are not boxes,
Yeah.
these little boxes, and that there's a lot more fluidity out there. And I think this is positive for everybody, even
Mhm,
though people on the right want to shut things down and they're all afraid and they want things to stay in the boxes.
mhm,
I think it just means more freedom for all of us.
mhm. Yeah.
The patriarchy is bad for all of us. It's
Mhm.
not just bad for women, it's bad for men,
Yeah, absolutely.
And like I said in that chapter in Mary Edwards Walker about, thinking of the innovations and advancements and the art and the joy and the pleasure that the world has missed out on because a certain group of old white men put their fingers in their hairy ears and said, no, 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 I don't want to hear about that from you. Like, literally, like, what? It's just so stupid.
And, and a loss, such a loss for
Yeah.
everyone.
I think
So
things are moving in the right direction, but
yeah,
when things are moving in the right direction, that also comes with backlash. It also
yeah,
comes with more violence and more threat to the most
yeah.
vulnerable people in our queer and transgender communities. And it's scary. Progress
Mm.
is scary, but I do feel in my heart that things are moving in the right direction, and it makes me feel really excited about what's coming in the future,
Yeah.
to be honest.
Well, whatever backlash of the pendulum in reaction to change, I mean, it always goes back and goes further out. And so I think it's just a harbinger of, as you put better than I just did, greater freedom that will improve everyone's lives. And that's exciting. So thank you for that answer. It's inspiring to hear you talk about that. Well,
Oh,
this book was your first book. It was clearly a labor of love. And I'm curious to find out, have you gotten the book writing bug? Do you have plans for another?
I have got the book writing bug. Um, because,
Yay!
yay! First of all, I have realized I love all writing. I'd like to write another play. I'd like
Mm,
to, continue to write TV projects. But early on, after we sold this book, very soon after, I got the idea for the second book, which was I've been told by my team that that doesn't always happen, and that sometimes
mm,
the second book can be a real struggle. Like, what's
mm,
next? The second idea, the book that I'm working on now, it's it's definitely would be like a sister, a companion to Frank.
mm,
It's not the same it's not the same hook, right? It's not about women disguising themselves as men, but it's definitely in the same vein of unearthing, excavating people who should never have been buried. Their legacies should not have been lost. And
Yeah,
unfortunately,
yeah,
this is a constant for women and their achievements in history. And so it's going to be similar. I'm very excited about it. I'm in the very early stages of that. And but I love books, and I didn't, you know, I didn't have a lot of angst writing this book, which
mm,
is incredible. I mean, I felt very, first of all, I feel like I had a troop of people with me. All these women, like, I just felt like they were like my team. Some of them are
mhm,
still alive, but a lot of them are, from long ago. And I felt so inspired and so like buoyed, like I got to sit down every day and spend time with all of them. And I do hope to also take on a novel, but
mm,
that's just the very beginning of a idea stage. There has been no
right.
writing done on that, because when I write something like Frank and the next book, it's a lot of research, as I'm sure you could
Oh,
tell.
yeah, I'm sure. Oh, absolutely. A ton of research. Just,
My bibliography in Let Me Be Frank is gigantic. It's almost like
yeah.
it's its own book. And so I just really love multiple sources, Mary. I
Mhm,
just love trying to get all these different angles and different um nuggets.
yeah,
And you have to read a lot of books, and you have to watch a lot of videos, or go through archives. It's a lot. But so it's kind of like a full-time job. It's hard to do
yeah,
multiple projects at the same time. But
yeah.
yes, that was the long-winded answer to say there will be another book,
Well,
maybe more than one.
that's a happy answer, though. I'll really look forward to it because as you sketched out your topic, I think that it's really important. It makes me think of somebody, for example, like Rosalind Franklin, whose work on DNA was just overshadowed by Watson and Crick. And so I think that that is also a really good companion piece for Frank. And how nice to have a book
Thank you.
that has a name like Frank. So anyway, Tracy, thank you so much. It's been wonderful to talk to you. If people want more information about you or about Frank or any of your other projects, I believe you have a website. Could you tell us about that?
Yep. So my website is tracydawson.net, but also I'm on Twitter, as long as it still exists. I'm on Twitter and Instagram, and my handle is the same on both of them, at Dawson Tracy. Um, and yes, I love followers. I think we're all going to be moving over to Instagram probably eventually. Who knows what's happening with that other site? Ugh.
Time
But
time will tell.
time will definitely
Yeah.
tell. But yeah, check out my website. I actually love my website because I designed it with the website designer, and it's all my favorite colors, and it's really fun. And I hope to start writing pieces and putting them up on there. I don't know if I'll eventually get to a newsletter. Maybe. It's a lot of writing to do, Mary.
It is. Be bold. Stay in there. I'm sure you will. Thank you so much. It's just been a real joy. What fun to talk to you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much for taking time to visit the show and tell us more about Frank. So Tracy, keep writing, and I look forward to your next books. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mary. You're great. Thank you.
Well, that's it for today's show, everybody. Please join us again next Thursday at 9 for the morning show. Till then, be well, take care, be bold. Bye, everybody.